Imagine a world very different from our own, a world that existed 5.5 million years ago. This was the Pliocene epoch, a time of great change for our planet. The continents were still slowly moving towards their present positions, and vast ice caps at the poles were beginning to expand. This global cooling had a profound effect on the climate. The air was drier, and the once lush continent-spanning forests were starting to retreat. In their place, vast grasslands and open savannas began to spread across Africa, creating a new kind of landscape. This was the stage upon which a new chapter in life's story would unfold. It was a world of opportunity, but also a world of immense challenge. Our earliest ancestors, the hominins, were just beginning their journey. They were not quite human as we know them, but they were taking their first tentative steps away from their ape-like cousins. These early beings, perhaps species like Ardipithecus or early Australopithecus, looked different from us. They were smaller, with longer arms suited for climbing and brains about the size of a modern chimpanzee's. Crucially, however, some were developing the ability to walk upright on two legs. This adaptation, known as bipedalism, was a revolutionary change. It freed their hands, allowing them to carry food, tools, or even their young over long distances. It was a small step for a single hominin, but a giant leap for our lineage. The world they inhabited was a mosaic of environments. In some areas, dense woodlands still offered the familiar safety of trees, where they could climb to escape danger or find fruit and leaves to eat. But increasingly, they had to venture out into the open savanna. This new world was a flat, expansive sea of grass, punctuated by acacia trees and rocky outcrops. Rivers and lakes provided essential water, but they also attracted a host of other animals, both predator and prey. Learning to navigate this patchwork of forest and grassland was the key to survival. Every journey from the safety of the woods into the open was a calculated risk, a necessary gamble for food and resources. The climate was generally warmer than today, but it was becoming more seasonal and unpredictable. There were distinct wet and dry seasons, which dictated the availability of food and water. During the wet season, the land was green and abundant, with fruits, shoots, and insects readily available. But the dry season brought hardship. Waterholes would shrink, plants would wither, and food would become scarce. These early hominins had to be incredibly resourceful and adaptable. They had to remember where to find water, which plants were edible, and how to survive the lean times. Their very existence depended on their ability to read the landscape and anticipate the changing seasons. For an early hominin, every day was a relentless struggle for survival. Their lives were governed by the basic needs of finding food, securing water, and finding a safe place to rest. The open savanna, while offering new opportunities, was also filled with constant danger. These small, relatively defenseless beings were not at the top of the food chain. They were prey. The world was full of powerful predators that were bigger, faster, and stronger than they were. Giant cats with saber-like teeth, such as Dinophalis, roamed the grasslands, and massive hyenas could crush bone with their powerful jaws. Every rustle in the grass, every shadow on the horizon, could signal mortal danger. Finding food was a full-time occupation. These early ancestors were primarily foragers. They gathered what the land provided, which required immense knowledge and memory. They ate fruits, nuts, seeds, and the soft shoots of plants. They might have also dug for edible roots and tubers using simple tools like sticks or sharp stones. Insects, such as termites and the eggs of birds or reptiles, would have been a welcome source of protein. While they were not yet sophisticated hunters of large game, they were likely opportunistic scavengers. If they found a carcass left behind by a more powerful predator, they would have to move in quickly and cautiously to steal a few scraps of meat before the killer returned. Water was the source of all life, and finding it was a daily priority. Hominins needed to stay close to rivers, streams, or waterholes. However, these places were also the most dangerous. Water sources attracted all animals, including the large predators that hunted there. Every drink was a moment of extreme vulnerability. An individual would have to be constantly alert, scanning the surroundings for any sign of a threat while quenching their thirst. During the long dry seasons, water would become even scarcer, forcing groups to travel long distances in search of it, exposing them to even greater risks out in the open plains. Shelter offered a brief respite from the constant threats of the world. At night, safety was paramount. Early hominins did not build complex structures. Instead, they used the natural landscape for protection. A dense thicket of trees, a cave, or a high, rocky ledge could serve as a temporary sanctuary. Climbing a tall tree was often the safest option, lifting them out of reach of the many predators that prowled the ground after sunset. Finding a secure place to rest was not just about comfort. It was a life or death decision that had to be made every single evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, bringing the darkness and its hidden terrors. In this perilous world, living alone was almost impossible. The most important survival strategy for these early hominins was cooperation. They lived in small, tight-knit family groups, much like chimpanzees or gorillas do today. This social structure was their greatest defense. Together, they could achieve what no single individual could. A group had many pairs of eyes and ears, all watching and listening for danger. If a predator was spotted, a warning call could be shouted, giving everyone a precious few seconds to scramble for safety in the trees or band together to appear more intimidating. There truly was safety in numbers. This group dynamic was essential for raising the next generation. Hominin infants were helpless for a long time, just like human babies today. They required constant care and protection. Within the group, mothers could rely on others to help watch over their young. This shared responsibility allowed some individuals to focus on foraging for food, while others kept a lookout for predators near the resting site. This cooperation ensured that more infants survived into adulthood, passing on the traits and behaviors that made their group successful. The bonds formed within these family units were the foundation of their society and the key to their future. Communication, though likely simple, was vital for coordinating group activities. They would have used a combination of gestures, body language, and a range of vocalizations, grunts, hoots, and calls, to share information. This could be used to signal the discovery of a food source, to warn of an approaching predator, or to maintain contact while moving through tall grass. This ability to communicate and work together allowed them to solve problems collectively. For example, they might have cooperated to chase smaller animals into a trap, or to drive away a lone scavenger from a kill. These simple acts of teamwork were the first glimmers of the complex social cooperation that defines humanity today. Living in a group also facilitated learning. Young hominins learned by watching their elders. They observed which plants were safe to eat and which were poisonous. They saw how to find water, how to use a stick to dig for roots, and how to crack open nuts with a stone. This transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next was a powerful form of cultural inheritance. It meant that a useful discovery made by one individual was not lost, but could be passed on, allowing the entire group to become more skilled and adaptable over time. This social learning was a critical step in our evolution, setting the stage for the development of more complex tools and behaviors. The journey of our earliest ancestors was a story of constant adaptation. The changing climate and the shift from forests to savannas forced them to evolve new ways of living. The most significant adaptation was walking upright. Bipedalism was more energy efficient for traveling long distances across the open plains, helping them search for scattered food and water sources. More importantly, it freed their hands. This simple change had profound consequences. Hands that were no longer needed for walking could now be used for carrying food back to the group, for wielding sticks for defense, or for making and using the very first simple tools. This ability to create and use tools, even rudimentary ones, marked a major turning point. At first, these were likely just opportunistically used objects: a sharp stone to cut meat from a bone, a heavy rock to crack open a nut, or a long stick to probe for insects. Over vast stretches of time, however, they began to deliberately shape stones to make them more effective. This was the dawn of technology. The ability to craft a tool, no matter how simple, demonstrated a new level of thinking and planning. It allowed them to access new food sources, like bone marrow, that were unavailable to other animals, giving them a critical nutritional edge. These early survival skills laid the groundwork for everything that was to come. The challenges of the Pliocene savanna shaped our ancestors in fundamental ways. The need to find food drove innovation and tool use. The constant threat of predators fostered cooperation and social living. The necessity of navigating a complex landscape may have even spurred the growth of a larger, more complex brain capable of memory, planning, and problem-solving. Every challenge overcome, every new skill learned, was a small victory that contributed to our lineage's survival and eventual success against incredible odds. Ultimately, the hominins of 5.5 million years ago were pioneers. They were not the strongest or the fastest creatures on the savannah, but they were adaptable, resourceful, and social. The skills they honed, walking upright, using tools, communicating, and working together in a group, were the foundational pillars upon which all of human history has been built. From these humble beginnings on the African plains, a lineage arose that would eventually learn to control fire, develop language, build cities, and even walk on the moon. Our journey began here, with these small, brave ancestors taking their first upright steps into a new and challenging world.